Last episode, we watched Stalin purge 90% of his generals, hide in his dacha during the invasion, and get saved by American capitalism disguised as communist heroism. Now let's cross the Atlantic and meet the good guys who are absolutely not as good as your textbook pretended. Buckle up. This one's going to hurt some patriotic feelings. All right, we've roasted the Nazi meth heads and the Soviet paranoid psychopath. Now it's time to talk about the good guys, the Allies. Those plucky defenders of freedom and democracy who definitely didn't have any morally questionable motivations or actions. Just kidding. Buckle up, because this is where the comfortable myths go to die, and patriotic feelings get uncomfortable. Let's start with the United States, the self-proclaimed arsenal of democracy, which is a beautiful phrase that evokes images of Rosie the Riveter, noble factories churning out freedom machines, and hardworking Americans sacrificing for the greater good. And sure, a lot of that actually happened. American industrial production during World War II was genuinely impressive, and millions of Americans served with courage and honor. But let's also talk about the arsenal of profit, because while Europe was burning and people were dying by the millions, American corporations were playing both sides, like a hedge fund manager who just discovered insider trading. Picture this. It's the 1930s. Hitler is openly rearming Germany in blatant violation of the Treaty of Versailles. He's giving speeches about conquering Europe and establishing a 1,000-year Reich. The writing isn't just on the wall, it's in neon lights with fireworks and a mariachi band. And what are American companies doing? They're doing business with the Nazis, baby. Because nothing says we oppose fascism quite like selling the fascists the tools they need to fascist more efficiently. Standard Oil, one of the biggest American oil companies, kept the Nazi war machine fueled. They sold petroleum and synthetic rubber technology to Germany through subsidiaries in neutral countries. Even after war broke out in Europe, the Nazis literally couldn't have run their tanks and planes without the fuel formulas and additives that Standard Oil provided. American gasoline powered the Blitzkrieg. Let that sink in. American companies helped make the invasion of Poland, France, and the Soviet Union physically possible, and they made millions doing it. General Motors owned Opel, a German car company that produced trucks for the These weren't civilian vehicles, they were military transport trucks carrying German soldiers and supplies. GM's German subsidiary was literally building the logistics backbone of the Nazi invasion forces, and GM executives knew it. After the war, GM even had the audacity to file for compensation for their factories that got bombed by the Allies. Hey, we were just selling trucks to genocidal fascists. Why'd you bomb our investment? The shamelessness is genuinely impressive. And then there's IBM. IBM. Their punch card technology was incredibly useful for organizing large amounts of data tracking inventory, managing payrolls, that sort of thing. It was also incredibly useful for tracking millions of people as they were rounded up, transported, and murdered. IBM's German subsidiary Dahomig provided the Nazis with punch card systems that helped organize the Holocaust. The efficiency of the genocide, the ability to track which trains went where, which prisoners were sent to which camps, which populations were targeted, was significantly enhanced by IBM technology. Now, IBM has always maintained that they lost control of their German subsidiary during the war and didn't know what it was being used for. And maybe that's technically true. But they sure were happy to resume business in Germany after the war and never seemed particularly bothered by the whole "our technology facilitated genocide" thing. It's the corporate equivalent of "I didn't know my roommate was a serial killer, but him keeping his Netflix password." The beautiful thing about American corporate collaboration with the Nazis is that it was the ultimate hedge your bets strategy. Build bombers to fight the Nazis with your left hand, sell the Nazis components for anti-aircraft guns with your right hand. That way, no matter who wins, the shareholders profit. It's not personal, it's just business. And business apparently has no soul, no conscience, and no problem with genocide as long as the quarterly earnings look good. But surely the American people were united in their desire to stop fascism from the beginning, right? Surely they saw Hitler's rise and immediately demanded action. Narrate a voice. They absolutely did not. When Hitler invaded Poland in September 1939, triggering declarations of war from Britain and France, a poll showed that only 42% of Americans thought the United States should join the war. 48% said no. When Germany rolled through France in May and June 1940, conquering the country in 6 weeks, in one of the most stunning military victories in modern history. American public opinion remained unmoved. A whopping 93% of United States citizens opposed declaring war on Germany. 93%. That's not a slim majority. That's a landslide of apathy. Americans saw Europe exploding, saw the newsreels of devastation, read the reports of Nazi atrocities, and collectively said, "Yeah, that's rough, buddy, but not our problem." It was the geopolitical equivalent of seeing a car crash and slowly rolling up your window while pretending to be on an important phone call. "Sorry, can't help. Very busy. Got my own stuff going on." The United States clung to isolationism like a security blanket. We had been burned by World War I, sent boys to die in European trenches for unclear goals and questionable outcomes, and the prevailing sentiment was never again. The America First Committee, one of the largest anti-war organizations, had roughly 800,000 members at its peak. Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator, gave speeches arguing that America should stay out of European conflicts, and maybe, just maybe, the Nazis had some good ideas. Spoiler alert, they did not. So how did America finally enter the war? Well, it took a direct attack on American soil. Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Japan attacked the United States Pacific Fleet in Hawaii, killing over 2,000 Americans and destroying or damaging numerous ships and aircraft. It was the ultimate fuck around and find out moment for American isolationism. Suddenly, when the war came to us, instead of staying conveniently overseas, 93% opposition turned into near total support for war. And this is the part that really reveals the cynicism, the war became the greatest economic stimulus package in American history. Remember, the United States was still recovering from the Great Depression. Unemployment in 1939 was 17.2%. By 1944, it was 1.2%. 1.2. The war didn't just end the Depression, it obliterated it. Millions of men joined the military, millions more went to work in factories producing war materials, and suddenly everyone had jobs, income, and a sense of purpose. War, it turns out, is fantastic for the GDP. It's hell for the people dying in it. But back home, it's an economic miracle. The United States spent $341 billion in World War II. That's $5.86 trillion in 2025 money. And that money didn't disappear. It circulated through the economy, creating jobs, building industries, and laying the foundation for the post-war American superpower status. The military-industrial complex was born during World War II. The United States Army, which ranked 39th in the world in 1939, smaller than Portugal's. Let me repeat that. Smaller than Portugal's, grew to over 8 million personnel by 19... The defense industry exploded. Companies that had been making cars started making tanks. Companies that made appliances started making ammunition. The entire economy reorganized around war production, and it was stunningly effective. The production numbers are genuinely mind-blowing. The United States produced nearly 2/3 of all Allied military equipment. 2/3. They built 300,000 aircraft during the war. In 1944 alone, they produced more planes than Japan did from 1939 to 1945 combined. They manufactured 41.4 billion rounds of small arms ammunition, enough to give every person on Earth at the time about 10 shots each. They produced roughly 650,000 Jeeps at $738.74 per unit. They built 62 tanks per day at the peak of production. The Pittsburgh Steel District alone outproduced the entire Axis combined. This wasn't just a military, it was an industrial tsunami. And it was powered by a home front that was genuinely making sacrifices. Rationing of food, coffee, sugar, gasoline, rubber, and metal was widespread. A 35-mile-per-hour speed limit was imposed to conserve fuel and rubber. Citizens held scrap drives, collecting 24 million tons of metal in 1942 alone. Victory gardens supplemented food supplies. Everyone was involved in the war effort, and for all its economic benefits, it required real sacrifice and commitment. But let's not get too misty-eyed about American virtue, because we need to talk about the stuff that doesn't make it into the feel-good war movies. like the fact that the United States military was completely racially segregated during World War II. Black soldiers fought in separate units, often assigned to non-combat roles, like supply and logistics, and faced discrimination even while wearing the uniform. Japanese Americans were rounded up and put in internment camps, concentration camps by another name, where they lost their homes, businesses, and freedom because the government decided their ethnicity made them a security risk. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were imprisoned, 2/3 of them American citizens. They weren't convicted of crimes. They weren't given trials. They were just locked up because racism plus wartime paranoia equals constitutional rights going out the window. And these weren't comfortable facilities. They were barracks in remote locations with barbed wire, guard towers, and armed sentries. Families lost everything. People died from inadequate medical care. And after the war, when they were finally released, many had nothing to return to. The government eventually apologized and paid reparations decades later, but that doesn't unruin people's lives. So yeah, the United States was fighting fascism abroad while practicing racism at home. We were defending democracy while denying basic rights to our own citizens based on skin color. We were liberating Europe while Japanese American soldiers fought for a country that had imprisoned their families. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Now let's hop across the Atlantic and talk about Winston Churchill, the British bulldog. The man with the speeches that could make you want to charge a machine gun nest. Churchill was genuinely a great wartime leader. His rhetoric rallied Britain during its darkest hours. His strategic vision was often sound, and his refusal to negotiate with Hitler probably saved Western democracy. All of that is true. But Churchill was also a die-hard imperialist who viewed the British Empire as the natural order of civilization and everyone else as lesser peoples who should be grateful for British rule. And that worldview had real, horrific consequences. During the Bengal Famine of 1943, over 3 million people died of starvation in British-ruled India. 3 million. The famine was caused by a combination of factors: poor harvests, wartime disruptions, Japanese occupation of Burma cutting off rice supplies, but it was made catastrophically worse by British policies. Churchill's government prioritized food distribution to British soldiers and stockpiles over starving Indian civilians. They continued exporting food from India even as people died. They refused offers of food aid from other countries. When officials begged Churchill to send relief, his response was reportedly, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" Now, there's some debate about whether he actually said those exact words. But what's not debatable is that his government's policies directly contributed to mass death, and Churchill showed minimal concern. He blamed the famine on Indians for breeding like rabbits. His racist contempt for the people under British rule was well documented. So yeah, Churchill saved Britain. He also presided over policies that killed millions of Indians. Both things can be true. History isn't simple, and people aren't either. But we have to acknowledge both sides, not just the heroic speeches and cigar photos. And then there's France. France, land of the resistance, symbol of defiance against Nazi occupation. Home of brave fighters who never surrendered in spirit even when their government did. All of that is true. The French resistance was real, and many French people risked and lost their lives fighting the Nazis. But we need to talk about the other France, Vichy France, the collaborationist government that didn't just tolerate Nazi occupation but actively helped with it. When Germany invaded France in May 1940, France had an 800,000-man army that was considered the strongest in Europe. The Maginot Line, a massive system of fortifications along the French-German border, was supposed to be impregnable. France expected to hold off Germany for at least a year, probably longer. They surrendered in 6 weeks. 6. The German invasion started on May 10, 1940. France signed an armistice on June 22nd. The military collapse was so sudden and complete that it shocked the world. The strongest army in Europe got steamrolled faster than a crypto portfolio during a market crash. It was the most spectacular military faceplant in modern history, and the Vichy government that followed. They didn't just cooperate with the Nazis. They enthusiastically participated in the Holocaust. French police rounded up Jews. French bureaucrats processed deportation orders. French citizens informed on their neighbors. Over 75,000 Jews were deported from France to death camps, and Vichy France helped make it happen. Not all of France collaborated, but enough did that we can't pretend it was just a few bad actors. So here is the uncomfortable truth. The Allies weren't the good guys because they were morally pure. They were the good guys because they were fighting people who were worse. That's it. That's the bar. Less evil than the Nazis isn't exactly a high standard, but that's the reality of World War II. And speaking of reality, let's talk about the actual cost of this war, not in noble sacrifices and heroic victories, but in cold, hard cash. Because in Part 6, we're following the money, and it leads to some extremely uncomfortable places. We're exposing how corporations profited from genocide, how war became the ultimate economic stimulus, and how the same companies building bombers were selling components to the enemy. It's going to make you sick, and it's sold. Click Part 6 right now, The Economics of War. Follow the money. Or check the full playlist in the description. Subscribe to Midnight Meme Historian because we've got 3 more episodes, and it only gets more cynical from here. Comment below. Should the US have entered the war earlier? Or was isolationism the right call until Pearl Harbor? Let's debate American exception. Support more episodes at ko-fi.com/midnightmeme. Your coffee equals my rage equals more historical roasts. Part 6. The Economics of War. Watch it now. Before you two recommends you another meditation video.